Hello everybody, Glitch Reaper here. I'm back for another Lycanites equipment combos video. And this time I've got one that was kind of an interesting question that I had to have answered. Just how many really heavy debuffs and inhibitive effects could I have on one piece of equipment? Uh, I could kinda maybe see another slot or so being used, but I think this might be one of the best combinations overall. Because I just had to make the most use out of certain things, so this is kind of a serious debuffing weapon. It does have the ability to harvest like a pickaxe, but otherwise it's more meant for combat. And as you can see, it looks pretty wicked. So yeah, that crystal spike, yeah, that's gonna smart. As usual, I'll go over the different things you'll be needing, including of course the lovely blocks here, and the fact that it looks very nice in all sorts of different ways. Wait, you know, because this doesn't really have a pommel on it, does it not? It still visually drills through the obsidian. That keeps happening. But you can't blame the crystal chests for it, because they weren't necessarily designed to operate with things that have fantastic 3D models as often. So, yeah, they weren't quite programmed for that kind of intensity. But yeah, you will be needing these blocks to get yourself going. The Lesser Equipment Forge is a crafting table and a wooden axe. You add a iron block to that to get the Greater Equipment Forge, and a diamond block to the Greater Equipment darn lips. A diamond block to the Greater Equipment Forge to get the Master Equipment Forge, which is the best one. It can do all the parts and at all levels, and you don't have to worry about any downgrades or anything. So it's pretty much just the best way to go. Now, you'll also be needing an equipment infuser to level them all up, and that requires a lesser equipment forge and to be surrounded with lapis lazuli in the crafting table. That's 8 pieces, not just one. Remember, I just put that as a visual reminder, and it fills the space better this way than with it all around. But the thing also is, I have heard that the charges now should be mostly set in terms of converting equipment to various things you can use to level stuff up. I can kind of maybe get a moment to check that. Because one of them, well, not the Spectre Tendril. Let me just kind of see here. What would I expect to have been a trickier part? Banshee Eye, maybe? Okay, so that mostly applies for the 1.15 version, or which is the most current version of Lycanites mobs. So, he doesn't necessarily have every part becoming something you can use to level up that same part, but the idea was that all of them would be able to be crafted into some kind of charge that you could use in the equipment infuser to level up anything of that same type of weapon part. So that's not quite fully here in 1.12, but maybe you can backport that eventually. I mean, Vapula Crystal. I have one in my inventory, but I'm also checking. See, that does become something that you can use to level it up. You can get the crystal shard charges, and that can be used to level it up. So that has been made sure to be a proper thing. Now, Geonoc Fist. These have been traditionally something slightly else. So I'm curious if this is... No, okay, that one, these are... Okay, so again, it's mostly that the ability to level them all up without having to seek out different mobs than the original is still kind of an ongoing thing. So, yeah, but the plan is that you will be able to level up the parts exclusively from fighting the mob that they came from. So that's an eventual thing there. So remember that I always go with level 3 to see what the final form of the weapon tool will be like. So that's where this really comes in. And remember, you need to put your charges in here and your part in here to fuel it up. So that's how that works. And they each have like their own little experience thing that's tracked. Although at level 3 it's basically maxed out and you don't need to worry about it anymore. So that's as far as it goes. It will keep track of that if you take apart the equipment and bring it back together. So if I were to, say, put this in here, these would each retain their experience. So that's something to also note that I might not have noted before. So if you take it apart and retrieve the pieces, you can in fact uh, keep track of all of your experience and level up the parts individually. So you can always hot swap parts. Now, Acupunked here is an interesting weapon because it is basically a kind of axe, or battle axe, or warhammer, or whichever way you'd kind of like to put that. In this case, it's kind of like a war pick, really, because we have the long pick here, so you can see how it's going to look whenever you're moving around with it. But now on to the parts and what you're going to be hunting down. Remember that all of them start with a base, and all bases add head slots, but not all add pommel slots. This one does not add a pommel. This is a Spectre Tendril. You'll find them whenever you're either very deep in the world or you have exposure to the void, which can also include Skylands type dimensions like the Ether, so you might find specters that way. This is important for its debuff in that it adds decay, which really inhibits healing. So you're trying to seal off an enemy's regeneration with this part. As a special note, Spectre Tendrils, rather uniquely out of all the parts, have negative 2 levels of knockback. So you subtract 2 levels of knockback from whatever the stat would eventually be. So this kind of keeps you from hitting the enemy too far away. If the knockback is in fact negative at the end of making a piece of equipment, it will actually pull them towards you. So you can have some interesting uses for that, but it's not something I've really tried specializing in, but it does sound like an interesting concept to use. So eventually I'll figure out the best way to use that. But for now, just remember, you'll be trying to go for this for the decay aspect, but also it will summon specters. They will pull the enemy into themselves and attack them with decay, so it can be very annoying to the enemy if you get that summon. Now, you have a Ventoraptor skull for a head part. Ventoraptors are found primarily in the plains, which show up fairly often in the game, so that's probably not something you're going to have a hard time finding. It adds severe weakness to it. Well, level 3 is certainly severe. And this adds a couple of axe parts in terms of slots. And the weakness will be slowing down your enemy's damage on you, so you're going to be heavily debuffing them in all sorts of ways. Now, this also adds a little bit of extra damage on its own, and that's one thing to kind of just keep in the back of your head, that the main pieces that are meant to deal the damage won't be dealing all of it. Sometimes you can kind of get extra parts to add on just a little bit more. So whenever these have like their different ranges and stuff that they're adding up to, and other stats, remember that it all adds together into the final product, and this thing together will be awesome. I mean, yeah, just take that in for a second there. But yeah, the Ventoraptor skulls should be kind of easy to find. And also, well, because you mine a lot in the game, these two will both be good for you to find while you're mining. Because geonox are found whenever you mine things like iron ore and gold ore, and basically just ores that drop themselves, you get geonox. And they are weak themselves against pickaxes, so keep in mind that since this thing harvests like a pickaxe, it will be strong against geonox. In fact, most of them you should probably be able to one-shot. So this will make it really easy to get more of them. And it does have some knockback of its own, and just between that and the Spectre Tendril, you basically canceled out. But the thing here is it adds weight, which inhibits the enemy's ability to jump and swim. So you can smack them into the water, and they might even drown, because you might be able to hit them so hard and so heavily downward that they might not be able to get up. And if you just hover near the water, you can just keep smacking them down. So you can imagine defeating an enemy that needs to breathe with this thing by very viciously smacking them downward repetitively. And of course, Geonox fists are, in Lycanite mobs, are even more famous for their ability to act as a fairly impressive pickaxe. So you'll be smashing some wide areas with this, should you wish to mine with it. So not only will it be good for smacking Geonox to get in your way with mining, it'll be allowing you to mine a very wide area. Now you also will be getting Vapula crystals from your mining, because Vapula are kind of a crystalline elemental, and they show up whenever you break an ore that drops something other than itself, like diamond and emerald ores or maybe redstone. So you'll be finding Vapula this way. This adds aphasia, which inhibits your enemy's ability to use items. Now, it doesn't perfectly work on a witch, but I'll still be fighting a witch. Well, he may have finally gotten that to work. I'm not sure. I'll see if the witch actually manages to draw a potion by the time I smack them again. So, we'll see. It also works as a pickaxe with a fairly wide area, and as a slight bonus, you might be able to shoot a crystal shard whenever you hit the enemy, and it manages to fly out from it automatically. This is like a 50-50 chance, but it's a nice little bonus. Also, if you destroy your enemy and the crystal keeps going, you might hit the one behind him. So that makes it rather handy. Now, again, remember that these will need to be charged up to get all the way to level 3, so that's going to be interesting, and any summons are based on the sweep. Now, looking at what it's going to be like altogether, this has some pretty impressive stats. 17 damage, 2 knockback, the range is 5 blocks, which is perfectly fine, and it has a sweep of a full 360. So, that's going to be very impressive. I mean, the attack speed's basically like that of a diamond sword. And normally, axe-type things are a bit slower, so that makes it very impressive that you have basically a battle axe that's as strong as it's better than a diamond sword and just as fast. But again, it's more like a war pick because this thing really heavily acts like a pickaxe. Anyhow, it will now those areas will overlap on the harvest, so this is going to be kind of ridiculous. It'll add decay, weight, weakness, and aphasia, and shoot out crystal shards on hit sometimes, and summon specters. So we've got a very impressive weapon tool here. So I'm going to, as usual, put the parts together. And yeah, I'm popping out just to occasionally see if a row is about to smack my stuff down. That whole situation's got me a tad paranoid when it comes to that, because they do it all the time. Okay, now I'm adding in the Spectre Tendril, the Ventoraptor Skull, and let me see, if I remember right, I put in this one next. So I got my Junok Fist in, and my Vapula Crystal. And now I have a nice identical pair, as you can see. And as usual, I will rename it to finalize it as the proper weapon here. So this is officially Acupunked. Why am I choosing that name? You're probably wondering. Well, the thing is, there's kind of a negative kind of acupuncture that can inhibit rather than help. So, well, that guy just might have volunteered as a target. But because of that, I thought it was kind of like you're punking your enemy a bit with trying to inhibit their flow. So, therefore, I thought, hey, why don't you just say they're getting punked? Okay, now this guy won't have, like, item usage, because he's clearly not a witch. But he's also clearly there, so... Hey, Hunter. Whoa, heavy lag, heavy lag. Need to stop moving for a moment. Yeah, he just got smacked hard. Very hard. I'm still trying to figure out what I can use these moon pearls actually for. But at some point, I will figure that out. Okay, which will happen. You even see me? Well, it seems to be using items a little bit, although that might be because the effect took a moment. So, we'll see about that. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to try to find some hard surface to smash. Didn't get Spectres summoned that time, but that's okay. It's not literally... even if you've got a full 360 sweep, it's not a 100% chance. So maybe I'll have one in a little while after I manage to smash something. Again, very inhibitive. I think it's because of all the tile entities at my showcase area. So I'm pretty sure that admittedly I may have kind of brought this on myself. Because the rendering is so intense that you kind of got to say, you know, I may have done this to myself. Also, interesting fact. Oh wait, is that? It's an evil cow. Oh, I think I managed to shoot there. Evil cow manages to help me to. Oh, I have a specter. And I think he made it so that all the summoned versions are physically smaller than their originals, so that might be part of it. It could be part of it right there, as to why I've been seeing them like that. But as I was going to say, remember that whenever you harvest with this, that parts from creatures, especially at level 2 and beyond, have a very high harvest level. And you can see I just smashed that whole thing with one hit. And might add, I don't have Vein Miner as a mod on. This just acts like a vein mining thing. So, therefore, what will happen is, as long as it's the same block, it'll smash that block, and it won't hit the ones that aren't that block. So you can harvest a humongous area at a time. Just huge. Just very huge. So, yeah. So, I just wrecked that area. That may also be causing me some lag. So, just grabbing some fossils because I can. Oh gosh. Yeah, I may have caused myself a slight bit of distress. Yeah. Oops. Caution when using this thing to mine. It may be more than you can handle at the time. Because it works maybe a little bit too good. But as you can see, if you're really focused on the combat aspect, which is this thing was mostly designed for, you're gonna be set to go. So yeah. Anyhow, this has been Glitch Reaper, and I'll be logging off. So hope to hear from you all later, and bye for now, everybody.